Blessed beings, as always, it is a precious moment when we meet in your awareness. For it is your awareness that changes worlds. It is your awareness that brings in information and allows it to connect with the fullness of you.
Why are our thoughts and emotions so important to begin to focus on if we want to make that bridge and transition even easier?
So our subtle bridge is our thoughts and emotions and our intentions that emanate out from us constantly. Awake, asleep, it doesn't matter. That information flow is constant. And as we become more attuned with that, then we're starting to consciously utilize that subtle communication, or the 99.9% part of us, and we're more effectively coherent.
Hello, family. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to share with you something that I've been working on for a very long time. This isn't just another idea or experiment. It's something that I believe will change everything within this community. For months, I've been building something behind the scenes, something that I believe is missing at the core from everything that we do here. I can't say much yet, but if you've ever resonated with any of the conversations on this podcast and you feel like there's a deeper layer into all of this stuff, you need to be at my first ever live event. It's happening very soon, and I want you to be part of this very sacred moment. You can hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now, and I will see you inside. Enjoy the episode, and I'm excited for the evolution that we're co-creating together. Jamye Price, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Well, they are intertwined because I'm really excited about all the change that's happening. And this time, it's getting palpable that it's the time that we've been waiting for. Like, we're at a precipice and the change is so intense. It feels like every part of my life is changing, but that also feels so right. And that's what's happening globally. And while it can at times look really negative, we know that that is the stirring up and the waking up of more people. And so I'm very excited to be on this path at this time.
You've also said that humanity is at a phase of empowered expansion. And I'd love to start off talking about expansion as well, because for years and eons, and we've seen humanity be in disempowered states. So I'm curious to know how we're dissolving those disempowered states within ourselves and within the collective to be able to go on to that phase of expansion that you talk about.
Yeah. So this to me is what the core of Ascension is all about. And Ascension is just a word that I often use for it. It's evolution and it's natural. But we're at a time of becoming more consciously aware and more consciously interactive with the subtle realms. We could call that our divine nature. We could call that our sovereignty, our divinity. And yet that's what this process is. And so in order to get to that expansion, because it's an expansion of our bandwidth from third dimensional focus into the subtle focus. This is very physical focused. This is very non-physically focused. And that's why we're paying more attention to our thoughts and our emotions. And that's why we're drawn to things that are more fulfilling on a deeper level rather than just the externalized. And so the expansion is all about becoming more sovereign within, becoming more empowered within, because it's that gives us the access point into our subtle expression, our divinity, or the 99.9+% of ourselves. This physical is the less than 1%, and our vastness is that connected nature. So we do that first by connecting with the self and going through any kind of release and activation phases and steps and experiences that are going to help us recognize and embody more of our sovereignty, more of our personal discernment, more of our personal passions, more of our connected nature or our loving nature. And then, even though these happen simultaneously, then we start expanding that out to the world around us. Because if we don't have that empowered self to begin with, then we're just out to fix or save, or avoiding the inner and going to the external. Well, I need to save the rest of the world. And that just becomes an ego game. So we have to have some of that embodied love and empowerment and discernment and self-nurturing and self-understanding to be able to more effectively and consistently expand outward and really embody the connected nature with others. So it's a very personal experience. It's unique to all of us. There's so many pathways that are part of each of our journeys, actually. It's not just one straight or one-way thing that you can do. And then it becomes a collective journey as well. And that simultaneous back and forth of those two creates that natural expansion.
You mentioned our thoughts and emotions, and I've also read that in your teachings you talk about this subtle bridge which helps us merge that human or that physical state into the higher self or the subtle self, the non-physical self. Why are our thoughts and emotions so important to begin to focus on if we want to make that bridge and transition even easier?
Beautiful. If we think about the physical realm as the realm of externalized expression, then part of what's very important here is that in the physical is that we are expressing outward, and we do that with our thoughts. We do that with our words, and we do that with our actions. So for us to expand that bandwidth beyond just the physical, our next level of subtle is our thoughts and emotions. And yet we're always communicating with that as well. And why my guides focus so much on our subtle bridge is when we recognize that we are constantly communicating and we are constantly expressing outwardly, even in our silence, even in our thoughts, even in our emotions, that it helps us to start to understand the flow of information and how life is responding to us. So our subtle bridge is our thoughts and emotions and our intentions that emanate out from us constantly. Awake, asleep, it doesn't matter. That information flow is constant. And as we become more attuned with that, then we're starting to consciously utilize that subtle communication, or the 99.9% part of us, and we're more effectively coherent. We're more effectively communicating. And then the other aspect of that subtle bridge, how life communicates to us, we can receive that more clearly. We can recognize even when we're not receiving that so directly, because it's natural to us and it's not always a deep message. We can recognize when we're resisting that, and then we can adjust and flow with it. So that subtle bridge helps to take something that can be a little more nebulous to us. Oh, I'm thinking positively, I'm feeling positively. That's a wonderful thing. But let's get into the full communication that's going. What other kinds of intentions are there? What parts are you avoiding and just trying to mask over with positive thoughts? What parts need some more of that release cycle so that the simultaneous activation cycle is actually more clear and there's not opposing factors. And so it helps us really get into balance. Balance is always key. It helps us really get into balance with the constant communication flow that is our subtle bridge back and forth with life, or the 99.9+% of us.
Because if we look at an atom, the building blocks of physical matter, 99.999% is energy. And that 99% of ourself, I would love to go deeper into your journey of when you started connecting with that whole 99% of you that isn't just physical matter. What started to come through in your reality?
I always love to start with, I was not a psychic child, so that people recognize there's so many ways that this can happen. And thank goodness for those that were awake and psychic as children, because they have a certain experience. And for me, when it started coming online, that was such an interesting experience. And it shows us that this can come online and it's only going to move faster and faster for anyone that is naturally interested in these things. And so for me, it started as I tried some things when I was like a teenager. I tried to astral project and I was trying so hard and it did not work. And so I just kind of gave up on that. But I wasn't really, that was some teen book that I had read, and I wasn't familiar with spirituality or anything like that, chakras, energy healing, light language, nothing. So in 1987, in my late teens, I started having these flashes of visions that I just thought I was imagining something. But the one that really started to piece things together for me was I would have these clairaudient messages that would come in that felt like my own thought. And they were things that would be proven within a very short time frame. And they were things that were so random, I could not have been like, oh, I see how that could have happened. Like I was driving somewhere and so is going to be there. People I hadn't seen in years. Sometimes it was even in another state than I lived in. And it was so random, I couldn't control it or not control it. But then I started noticing that it was becoming a little more prevalent and it was starting to happen in other ways. And then over a course of quite a few years, where I would have these waves of opening, I started recognizing that I was communicating with my guides. I was being given impulses, not even do this, but an impulse that felt like it came directly from me. Like, I don't know anything about energy healing. I'm not familiar. I've never been around it, but I'm just going to hold my hand over my body when I wasn't feeling well. And it actually worked. And I wasn't like, I'm going to energy heal myself. I was just following something natural. And so that opening started progressing over time. And as it became a little more prevalent in my life, and I was noticing it happening more consistently, and I was interested in that, then the thing that I just became obsessed with started, which was the energy healing. That was when I held my hand over my body. And that then progressed into an obsession with Ascension. And I just knew that I would always find a way to be doing the things that I'm doing now, because I was just so excited about it. And now this is what I expect is natural for us. It's what I know is such a vast part of us, the 99.9+% of us, that as long as we stay interested in that and let it flow us and flow that course, then it's only going to keep expanding, because we're integrating more and more and more consciously our subtle self embodied into the human form, in the physical. So it just became an obsession ultimately.
And then you also started to make some cosmic connections. And from there, I'd like to ask you, why do so many people feel a connection to lions or feline species, that energy template? Why are so many people beginning to remember that there's some sort of connection there with themselves?
Yeah. So as we expand our consciousness bandwidth, which kind of starts unconsciously at first, it starts with the awareness and things that we learn about or things that happen to us. And as that availability is there, which it's happening naturally for everyone, and some resist it, some are more open to it, but it's expanding into more of our own subtle information. And that expands us beyond just the earth experience into the subtle experience that is our cosmic connection, our timelessness, our information that's in our Akash. And that then opens us up to things like our cosmic heritage and our channeling capabilities, connection. It might come in dreams, or it might just come in an interest. But that's expanding us into the broader information that we're ultimately here to be and experience, which is connected beings, not just a rando earth thing that happened. So it's expanding out. Now, that then opens us up into different aspects of our cosmic heritage. And the Lyrans, that are known as the felines, they represent the beginning of this particular track of physicality, or what we are culminating here on Earth, which is the polarity integration of that physical track that they began. Now, that brings other cosmic races into it through time, and sometimes just through interaction, races that aren't necessarily progenitors of that physical humanoid track, but that are assistants or are cosmic connections with that. For instance, the Arcturians, they are not a progenitor race of the Lyrans, but they've always been part of supporting that physical embodiment. And so the Arcturians come into that play. But the Lyrans especially became more prevalent and up into our consciousness more when we were ready to get more to the core of our polarity integration, which is the two, and the two that we blend in duality here is the two opposites of masculine energetic and feminine energetic, or electric and magnetic, or any way that you want to look at those dualities. And yet we know that we all contain both. And it's the connection of that within each of us that then helps us embody that fuller creative flow, or the fuller electromagnetic interaction and information. So the Lyrans, or the feline race, became more prevalent in our consciousness when we were ready to go deeper into the core of what we're here to integrate, part of what we're here to integrate.
Mm. And it's so interesting because you've also mentioned how the Lyrans, they went through an extreme polarized experience in the beginning of their evolution. And the beings that you bring through your guides, they're an aspect of Lyrans that have already transcended physicality. So they're in non-physical state. But when we go into the Lyran, I guess, history in that sense, there's talk of this, like the Lyran Wars. I don't know if you've remembered any of that, because I feel like there's a mirror to us right now as we're culminating this experience and how we're seeing wars around us. What could you tell us about that time in Lyra when they went through those wars, and how it's mirroring us what is to come for our evolution and our ascension journey?
Yeah. One thing that they always say is life is fail-safe toward love. And all of this separation that we go through, it just keeps mixing and mixing into more connection. And that's ultimately what they found, because they experienced such extreme polarity that they couldn't recognize the subtle ways that they were harming themselves and others. It just seemed like the logical thing to do. And then there was also other polarizations that were so physical, so non-physically focused that they were just polarizing towards the other end of the spectrum. And so what they learned through all of that, and to me, these wars are all integrated. Sometimes you'll hear them called the Lyran Wars, sometimes you'll hear them called the Areon Wars, and they're different aspects and parts of a greater whole. And so what I see playing out here on Earth is different parts of that. That some come in with a strong Orion experience, some come in with a strong Lyran experience, and some through that separation that still needs to heal, and some through that connection that then helps those that are separate have that potential to heal that. Even if we're not interacting with them directly, we're putting that into the field here. We're anchoring that here, which is why Areon says constantly, the Lyran Council of Time says constantly, live your life boldly. Even in your silent moments, really be yourself. Let yourself fully embody into this realm because you're flowing information into the field. And that's very different than the helplessness and desperation and fear that can be such an obvious reaction to such trauma and challenge that's going on here. And so as we are looking for those parts in the self that is feeling that separation or avoiding that connection, then we're working through some of those energetics of what created such drastic, harmful experiences through our cosmic heritage and currently embodied here. So it often takes some of that immersion into things like what you're doing, where we have these times where we connect and we all remember and remind each other who we truly are. And we look past the surface of this is happening, or this system of suppression, or this negative system that feels so big. We're watching them in their natural death throes that will take time. And it's not always going to just flow in an easy or direct evolution. Sometimes that evolution goes through its ups and downs. And so we're here to navigate holding more of that neutrality, which is the connective force. You referenced the subatomic model. It's the largest aspect of that, and the proton and the neutron that are within the nucleus. When those are balanced, your positivity with your neutrality, then you have the most stable change, as that opposite of the electron is connecting to create new form, to create a new wholeness, not just the opposition of something bad hurting something good. So we have to maintain more of that neutrality in our own lives, even through our ups and downs, in order to bring in more of that informational critical mass that helps these transform, because change is here and it's inevitable. This is the realm of change, to help that transform through something that is more stable, even though that's going to have its ups and downs.
Do you feel there's a certain original wound that some of these cosmic neighbors that we have, like the Lyrans, went through, that humanity is here to, in a way, help heal or repair even those potential timelines in the future? What is that original wound of beings that live through physicality? You know, we mentioned the polarity aspect of it, but is there something deeper than that?
To me, it's separation, because that's the core of the duality, is separate and connected. And we could call those all kinds of synonyms: separation, fear, anger, greed, protection, survival. And yet we can also see how those would be so natural, that when there's fear or that sense of having to protect the self or feed the self in some way, whether that's physically with food or water or air, but we can understand that. And then that connection is the other duality. It's the other aspect of that, that duality or polarity or even physicality, linearity, it is the experience of separation. So when we come into a density that has a dimensional expression of the separation of time and space, then we're naturally moving through understanding how that connection is and looking for that connection. And that's what love gives us. That's even what our biomechanism gives us, with that natural familial connection and that natural pull to love. So that core wound to me is separation. And the thing that our ancestors have also lived is the solution to that. And that's why they come more into our awareness as we expand our bandwidth of being able to more easily access our own timeless nature. That we recognize that we aren't truly separate. We aren't truly alone, having to figure this out and light work the bad away or anything like that. That we're here connected in something that is so much bigger than us. It's the 99.9+% of this experience, but it's invisible. And in order to have that connection or that awareness or that availability to it, we have to seek to expand our own resonance and work through any of those ups and downs that are the beautiful gift of this linearity that take us out of neutrality so that we can find it again in that new expanded state. Because when something knocks you off balance, you have the choice to tip into more balance, more polarity, or to expand into more balance. And that's what we're looking for. It's a constant dance back and forth with that. And that's what our ancestors are here to remind us. This is natural. It's a cycle of life. We've lived the pain and we've lived the solutions. And we're here living this with you now because we're also timeless. And so we're helping you through this in ways that aren't always tangible and aren't always obvious in the moment. But that's the connection that we're expanding into.
I'm sensing there's a relationship between being in a state of neutrality, and I'd also love to explore how that actually looks like in our daily life, to this connection to the subtle realms. Is there a connection there between those two?
Yes, and yes, and meaning that when we're not in that more expanded neutral state, because that's what neutrality does, it opens up our field. When we're not in there, it can feel like we're just disconnected. And certainly we can even see evidence of the ways that we might behave or create in the physical realm that propagates more separation. But even in those states when we are feeling or acting separate, we're still connected. And yet what neutrality will do is open your field up for more connection. And the thing that can be tricky is it doesn't always feel like that meditative state where there's a beautiful breeze and you're in this moment of bliss. That sometimes that's the way neutrality is, but sometimes neutrality is fast action. But it's fast action that might be mixed with something that feels akin to fear. Like I often use the firefighter example. When they come into a situation, they're not just like, oh, let's help. Or you have a child that's about to walk across the street. You don't just, oh, let's stop and slow. You grab and you yell.
Let's levitate him.
Yes. You respond in the moment, and yet you can still have what is a modicum of openness and neutrality in even those moments. And so we have to practice that sense of openness when it is that moment of bliss and we're meditating and we're in that kind of a state. We have to practice the neutrality in I'm working and I'm moving and I'm implementing this in life. As an Aries, I use the Eckhart Tolle one from The Power of Now, I think, where he's like, when you're washing your hands, just be in the moment, feel the water. And so I have to sometimes slow myself down into that expanded state. And then can we also practice neutrality when we're in some of those heightened states, like, oh, this makes me angry, or this makes me feel so much sorrow and hopelessness? Can I work myself back into a perspective that grounds me, not just avoids, but that expands me into, I understand the pain, and I also know that there's more going on. And even if I don't have all the answers in this moment, can I neutralize into a state where I can be open to new solution, where I can be part of recognizing that I'm flowing something different, even if I can't define it or name it or feel it fully? Can I get there more and more? So we have to nurture that in all of those different states so that when things are coming into our lives or coming into our awareness, because they always remind me, you never just hear or see something. It becomes part of you. You take it in, you receive it. So if you immerse in too much negativity and I need to know what this side or that war is happening, you don't just avoid, but you have to watch what you're doing with that energy, because you want to be able to get back to a place of neutrality that allows new solution to embody rather than more polarity. Oh, it's so wrong. Well, let it become more neutral so that the opposite can flow in. And so that neutrality is a doorway for new solution to build, even if we don't have the knowledge of what that actual solution is.
Mm. Have you felt into any forces that in a way unconsciously pull us toward those extremes rather than wanting us to maintain that center and that neutrality state? And how do we begin to start becoming aware of when we're getting pulled into this stream of extremes in a way?
Oh, beautiful, Emilio. I love how you keep taking this into things that are so important for us and yet so natural to us, because that is part of a big part of what this time is all about. Because our awareness, our our mental and emotional coherent awareness is the core of what we're going through to expand into more subtle interaction or embody more of our divine nature. And in the physical realm, this is an important one because our awareness can so easily get pulled in different directions. And some of that is through negative propaganda or negative control. And some of that is through positive control or positive propaganda. Oh, Jamye, you came here to save the world. You're so special. And oh, the world just needs to receive you and then it can be healed. Well, that's some positive propaganda that if I allow that to polarize me, then I'm just tipping myself in the opposite direction of ego imbalance, one direction of ego imbalance. And so to be aware of when we're getting too far pulled in a direction of hopelessness or need or all kinds of words, desperation or obsession, and in any kind of negative way that's pulling us off balance, we just need to take that time to be like, oh, am I letting positive YouTube comments overtake me? Am I letting negative YouTube comments overtake me? Am I giving away my sovereign power to either of those polarizations? Because that's a constant in the physical realm. That's marketing, it's the news, it's outside forces that want money from you, it's capitalism. And those can all be things that are used in positive ways or are used in negative ways. And so we have to hold that sovereignty of, where's my power? What am I feeling out of control about? What's becoming addictive? even though it may not be an obvious drugs or alcohol addiction, it might be positive influence or negativity and things like that. It's so core to what we're going through, because holding this subtle bridge for our sovereignty rather than outside forces is the core of being able to expand each of our unique vibrations, so that then we're connecting and we're creating this critical mass of more expansion or a broader embodiment of love.
Hmm. What does that critical mass look like?
Oh, that's a good one. So I was looking up to hear them, because they are saying, look for the feeling of it. And we're going to ultimately have times in it and out of it for a while as the collective goes through this, and especially in these intense times of change. So what that critical mass feels like is all of those positive things that we may attribute to those, like, I feel hope, I feel support, I feel love, I feel creativity, I feel inspiration, I feel potential. Even though sometimes that's going to feel like, look what's going on. Wait a minute, let me get myself back, and I'm not quite there. Oh, now I can access it. Oh, it's gone. That's okay. I know I'm expanding, and it's going to change like a season, back and forth for a bit until there's a fuller expression of that season. And so it looks like more of us remembering. And from my perspective, having gone through this process obsessively in the positive way since the early 2000s, before 2012, and what that looked like building up to that, what it looked like during and after, and then how these recent years have felt like 2012 on steroids. I know our bodies have changed. I've seen it in thousands of sessions that I've done. I know that it's so much easier for people to open and awaken and channel and create and understand these concepts and live them. And I know that that's there because I've been through that process of going, woo, what's going on? And the years of that building. Even I still sometimes am like, oh, come on, are y'all sure? This is really feel safe to love. But that's what the critical mass is, that you can have all of those ups and downs, and you can still hold that knowingness that there are more people awakening. This is becoming more natural to us, and it's opening in ways that more and more people are going to accept it. Even my sweet mommy, she is technically a silent generation. Just the other day, she was talking to me and she's like, oh, it just feels so intense. I think it's the solar flares. she's not into this stuff in the same kind of way. And I'm like, oh, yes.
And a little while ago, I was subtly hearing some meowing from a little feline, probably close to your area, and I would love to know if, you mentioned your guides, Areon, who are these non-physical Lyrans, if they would like to come through for a message to share with us, really bring together what we've been talking about, where we are in our ascension journey. They've been through this before, and anything else that they would like to bring through, and we'll just hold space for that if you're open to it, for sure.
Sure. Yes.
Mm.
Blessed beings, as always, it is a precious moment when we meet in your awareness. For it is your awareness that changes worlds. It is your awareness that brings in information and allows it to connect with the fullness of you, where you have the free will choice to focus and to ask and open for information and to transform and change that information within you. You often call this holding space, so that all that then emanates from you silently and externally is the resolution. It is what you are doing constantly when you bring your awareness into an internal flow of the information that is within you. You are at a time now in this journey of intensified change as the spiral of time and space that you reside within tightens and tightens into a more concentrated flow. And as that hourglass spiral tightens into this flow, it then at certain points that occur throughout time meets that opposite into the implosion, explosion of the 0 point energy that then flips the experience. And what this process is a time frame of such intensified change that the point that humanity is at now calls you to believe, to remember, and to become that which you are creating on the inside, so that it then holds that resonance of what will be changing. This is a time frame, not a moment. And you do this in all of your moments as you have that spiral tightening. And sometimes that implosion, explosion creates immediate 0 point. Sometimes it creates more polarity that you then transform back into that neutrality or that 0 point state. As you do that in your moments, and allow that dance to occur, you are holding a resonance that allows a broader flow of that neutrality to occur at the more collective points. But at this stage that you are at now, you must believe or hold resonance. Remember, become conscious of what you are creating, and become, recognizing that it is within you as it always has been and will be. And it is not just the actions that you do that force change. It is the resonance that you are that allows change. You are on track. Though it may not feel like it as you observe some things that go on in your world, that is the fuel for you to believe something opposite can occur, to remember that you can create that, and to become. That true memory is that you are the resonance of love. And now your physicality does not always show it. Your energetics do not always show it. And that is the believing part. For you to find that information in that community so that you can remember and hold that resonance to very naturally become that which you truly are. With great love, we not only observe, but support you because we are you. We recognize the connection. And we end all of our transmissions with our prayer, Isha, Ema, Eta. We receive you because we are you. And in your awareness, you are within us. We love you. We recognize the connection because we are you. And we bring your love forward. Because of this connection, life is forever changed. That is what you do with your awareness. And so we honor you of the vast divinity that you are with our prayer of recognition. Isha, Ema, Eta.
Welcome back.
Nice. Nice. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah. You know, I loved the reminder that it's not always easy to see the changes, because they talk a lot in their channelings about some of the physical energetic changes that we're going through, things that are changing with our brain, and how we are readjusting things because of this time, but they're not always obvious. And so it is sometimes having to believe that changes are actually happening, because if we just look at the physical, which is where our senses are so dominant, until we expand more of our subtle senses, if we just look there, we're like, woo, bad things happening. But we have to remember that this change is occurring. It's just not going to be on the news yet.
And I'm curious to know, because you've worked with so many people and you're seeing these changes firsthand, what are some of those maybe really subtle changes that we might not even be aware of that are actually happening? And once we can bring them to the awareness, even no matter how small they are, they allow us to confirm and know that we are in this ascension journey. We are changing. We are evolving. What have those subtle changes been that you've identified?
So some of them I see very directly in the energetic field. The zeal point chakra, some call it the mouth of God. I think there's one other name for it that I've heard. But that has become more activated, I would say, and progressively so, but I would say for at least 5 years, maybe a little bit more than that, actually, probably closer to 7, where more people have that activated, and therefore there's more natural coherence in their energy field. There's been some changes with the brain that make it easier to sustain what I call an active theta, where it's a little beyond just that meditative state, and it's not fully just going into, you know, that unconscious, I need to close my eyes, I need to get quiet and focus, which is still vital, but that we have more access into an active theta, that even as you're interacting, you have more of a potential to hold that awareness and that energy flow and keep that more active. That, especially as I was teaching crystalline soul healing more and more, I was seeing that become more activated, because it's something that is naturally plugging us into a broader connection, or more of our natural universal connection. So that active theta has been something that's been opening up. The thing that they're talking about now that I see happening more and more is what Areon has called the tri-wave brain flow, which typically we have a lot of right brain, left brain over, crossover. And it's not that we never had this other flow, this other type of flow, but it's become more predominant where not only do we have more right left connection, that we're also opening up more of the subconscious to conscious mind flow that then can create more of that neutrality, because it actually becomes a triality rather than just connected duality. So that what that does for us, rather than I'm only left brain or I'm only right brain, we have that capability to sustain back and forth with those more. But then it also opens up more of that subconscious connected to the conscious mind, where we're more easily tuned in to the subtle realm, or what the subconscious does for us is it creates that broader connection. And that technically is opening up more of the superconscious or the infinite mind. And this is why it's becoming easier and easier to meditate with some practice. It's becoming easier to do other forms of meditation rather than just the seated, eyes closed meditation, which again is still so helpful and vital for us. Don't get rid of that. But that implementation of walking meditation or connective alpha, what would normally be beta brain, connecting into the alpha and the theta as we're talking. And so those are some of the bigger changes that we've been going through that may not be so obvious. One other way that I want to point out that can show itself is we're easily able to tune into the subtle. For instance, I could think about Tabasco, which I love, and start to sweat and really have the smell and the feeling more visceral in my experience. I could think of, this one just happened to me, my cat that passed recently in the past couple of months, that can be so visceral. It's not just, I'm thinking about it, I'm experiencing it. And that's how we know that we're stepping into more of that connective nature with the energetic physical structure.
And that's when reality starts to get really interesting for us, because we're experiencing so much more of ourselves. And another one of those maybe not so subtle changes, one of the more bigger changes for us, is this activation of light language that you're a huge pioneer in. And from a religious context, we have a word called glossolalia, which is like that term of when someone in the religious context was speaking in tongues, and these very crazy experiences were happening in the church. But bringing that into a spiritual context and how you've seen this ability evolve in people and in yourself, what is this? What, beyond just what it is, how is this expanding our connection to the subtle self and to all the other realms that surround us simultaneously?
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. First, just physically, it is supporting our broader language centers that have always been there. So instead of using memorized and contextualized expression, we are using something that's natural, but it's more of a limbic system communication. And so it's helping our physicality to change, and it's coming up because our physicality is actually changing. Now, the bigger purpose of it, which I find so exciting, circles back to what we were talking about earlier with the subtle bridge, because when we are communicating in light language and externalizing that, it's not always externalized, but it's helpful for us to recognize it through the externalization and then understand it in its broader context. But it helps us to understand that we are communicating in so many different ways, and we have so many different forms of communication available to us. And that's why verbalizing it or externalizing it in a written or a signed form can be so helpful to us, because it shows us how life is communicating to us, how our body responds to these things. And it brings that into a more experiential understanding. And that part is what's important for actual wisdom or continuing to add on or expand in a direction. Because when it's just theoretical, that's a beautiful first step. That's awareness. That begins change. It's a vital part of our expansion. And yet, if it just stays there and doesn't embody, then we don't integrate that next layer of connection and truth, and the next layer of connection and truth, etc. So light language is expanding naturally because we are ready to expand and evolve our communication from just, I'm going to speak to you and tell you my opinion and give these things that I learned or memorized, that it helps us expand into that flow of the broader self, from the higher self to even beings that are beyond that. And so it's such a vital part, even though you don't need light language to expand, but it is also such a vital part of our recognition of the constant communication that's going back and forth with life. And therefore, it helps us to expand our telepathy, our intuition, how we're receiving information, how we're externalizing information, and to bring some of that expanded communication into our present moment. It's really exciting and, of course, natural.
And the moment that your light language began to come through was after this light body activation modality that you went through. Can you take us to that moment of why that was the breakthrough for you to be able to bring this light language through and connect to those different ways of perceiving and receiving information?
Yeah. So this was the early 2000s. It was 2002. And I had already been psychically open. I was already working on clients. I was already in communication with my guides. And yet I was at another phase of opening more energy flow. And somehow that I came across that axiotonal alignment. And the axiotonal system is just part of our light body, as you reference. You know, our chakra system is part of our light body, our Merkaba, our axiotonal system, the auric, the energy fields, all of that part of the light body. And the axiotonal system it mimics the meridian system. And so the meridians that we have within our body that flow energy, the axiotonal system extends out universally. And so it's kind of like our universal meridian system. And so for me, which can be different for others, but for me, that expansion of that axiotonal connection that was already there somewhat because I was already communicative with my guides that were cosmic, they weren't earth related, but that really amped it up to the next level. And so that process expanded me to a point where then my body was ready for light language. And at that time in the early 2000s, there wasn't information about it. I wasn't aware of what it was. I had never heard of light language. I wasn't familiar with speaking in tongues. I'm sure I had seen it because I think there was some movie, I can't remember the name, but I think there was some movie that had some of that in there, but I still didn't have context with it. So that then created that readiness for my body to express it. And for someone else, it might be a different process. And you don't need the axiotonal alignment in order to be able to access light language, of course. But that triggered me into an opening that I was then ready to embody that. And that kind of thing is happening for us all the time, where we go through these expansions that are creating access into something that is more of our subtle resonance. And that's what light language is. So we will become interested in it, even if we don't transmit it, or we will start to transmit it either as something activates it, like seeing or hearing it online or a process or going through a class, or it will just spontaneously happen while we're meditating or doing a ceremony of some sort. So that expansion is constantly happening for us. And for me, there was a lot of suppression early on because I loved the sacredness of the safety of that container of healing. And I'm so glad that it started that way for me. But then I had to go through a lot of fear and moving past judgments that I thought would be coming from the outside. But of course, they were coming from the inside. And now I wouldn't trade that journey for anything because it's been part of just such a deep passion and such a beautiful sacred communion with life. But I knew, obviously, that it was going to keep expanding like this because it is so natural to us. It's part of all of us, whether we do it or like it or not. And I just love that what it brings is such a beautiful expansion and how life can and is communicating with us.
How would you guide someone to intend in their reality to have those expansion moments and breakthroughs come to them and go through these upgrades consciously rather than spontaneously if they really want to accelerate that evolution within themselves? How would you guide someone to consciously ask for it and have that appear in their reality?
Beautiful. And this is available to us with just about anything that we want to create. That you set intention, and rather than worrying about, I have to say it the right way or I have to do it every day, that we set that intention and we mean it. And we're also very open and neutral, coming back to that neutrality. And so just setting that clear intention, I want to open to light language. And then letting those ways that might occur come through over time. So you can set the intention. You might even meditate. You might be drawn to do something, read my book, go find some light language on YouTube and engage with it, ask questions and do some automatic writing in your own language. What is it? What is it like opening to it? Just anything that is setting that intention and then just relaxing into how that journey is going to occur for you. And all of this, whether it's something you want to expand in your creativity or it's channeling in your known language or energy healing, all of those things are available to us in different ways. And it's so important for each of us to let our passions and our desires be supported and then find what it's like to traverse a path that sometimes has more of a solo aspect to it because your unique experience is always there no matter what you do. And then also has other supports in it because that can help move it along. It can give you different perspectives. So just really setting an intention, relaxing into it, and then following those prompts of things that feel like sometimes your own impulses or an idea, but it's your higher self and your guide team calling you along to the next appropriate step. Everything is available to us, and especially light language. And so just recognizing the importance of our intention is a big part of our expansion as well, that subtle bridge of communication.
What can someone experience or activate within themselves when they open to receive a light language transmission? I'm not saying we're going to do one unless you want to, but what can occur and what have you seen in people that you've worked with when this energy comes through?
Yeah, so I'm happy to do a transmission, but whenever we're interacting with light language or energy healing in many different forms, that we are in a state of broader communication, and light language itself is neutral It's just like our words or the things that we might write or the actions that we might do. Like I might grab a child and pull it quickly. Well, really, the context, it's not the action, it's the context. Are they about to step in the road or not? That's the only context that, really well, not the only one, but that's a context that shows that the action itself is neutral, could be positive or negative. And that's what happens when we're interacting with subtle energy like light language or energy healing, that it is just expanded connection flow. But when we get into more and more connection, there's more and more love, because those are synonyms. And so when we're interacting with it and receiving it, our higher self is speaking that fluently and therefore deciding what that vast connective information how it will affect you. What are you going to release? What are you going to activate? And those are two sides of one coin that always occur, even if one's more obvious in a moment. And so you can have physical healings. You could have subtle body healings, like mental or emotional things that sometimes just feel like more peace. But what that's doing is relaxing you into more neutral flow. And that therefore naturally brings you into releasing things that aren't resonant with that expanded state and activating things that are resonant with that. So I've seen physical healings. I've seen mental and emotional healings that then create a trajectory of more creativity or this inspired action, this choice on a relationship path or a business path or whatever. And then, of course, spiritual healing, because we're recognizing that connection more. So the possibilities are as unique as each of us are, and it's going to respond to that moment. So sometimes you can go back to the same transmission and have a whole new experience because your resonance is different and what you will release or activate is different. That timelessness is inbuilt into that, and it brings it into our awareness more, because that same kind of timelessness is inbuilt to everything. A novel that was written in the 1890s, it still has that timelessness in it. It's just we don't see it as obviously as we will in other ways. And that's part of what light language is doing for us. It's helping us to recognize that timelessness that is part of this experience as well.
Do you intend certain light language transmissions depending on the context?
I do. And sometimes, well, the better answer is sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. And yet I always do, because understanding our intentions is recognizing that there are always levels of intentions that are going on. And the clearer and more coherent that we get, the more we're able to access more of those core intentions. And so another part of what our subtle experience shows us is some of those layers. So sometimes when I have a certain situation going on, I might intend that particular topic. Sometimes I want a certain experience, and so I might intend a certain connection, like with my Lyran guides. And those kinds of opportunities are always there. And yet there's also this deeper understanding or intention that's always there as well, because I'm expanding into the connective realm, that whatever is resonant with that connection is what's going to be there. And so sometimes I might even intend, I want to connect with my Lyran guides. And then I'll have the experience of something completely different because that was the better resonance in that moment. And so I set intention whenever I feel that's appropriate. And then I'm also open to whatever's for the highest good. And that's just universal law. That's just us coming into more experience with, yes, I'm here in physical, I intend and direct things, and that's important. And yet I'm also connected into the broadness, and I'm also open to that. And that's that positive blended with the neutrality that's the nucleus that allows that opposite or that new wholeness from the electron, that negatively charged electron, to connect. So absolutely, directing and creating, that's part of our physical experience. And then always there's something bigger and broader there. And becoming more conscious with that is also becoming part of our physical experience.
Well, it would be an honor, Jamie, to receive a light language transmission from you. And I'm sure that everyone listening would love that as well. So let me know how you're feeling about that. And we'd love to do that.
Yes, let's do that. So what I'm feeling as I just got quiet as I was drinking my water is to see more clearly. That's what the broader intention is resonant right now. And this comes back to what Areon was saying about believe, which is that first step of, yes, that's possible. And then to remember, which is integrating that, knowing that it's possible. And then to become, which is integrating that beingness or that implementation of that possibility. So that is the broader intention, that we each see more clearly. Oh, and then the first thing as that was coming in was to truly see our divinity, our power, because that's where the empowerment comes from, that we embody our power. Beautiful.
Love that.
So everyone take a nice, relaxing breath. And as you're hearing the light language and the crystalline soul healing is flowing, recognizing that your higher self will release and activate for your highest good. And then just see what you notice, any kind of physical sensations, thoughts, emotions, psychic impressions. That's the quote unquote translation of the light language. Emniarut nakwa brayat. Bramhand hadat anstayak mat uramat il retiet tian. Quas kurum hacharat. Brum hatianat il rikmahtim Brim kormet nim short akral haratem anend ekriet Hambraurat and such brar haktium mnor antil ratum. Kinim aurat kor akaurat such der anel. Nor haremat nem sukorat anstayarakat wa brar hantat nem sukmem. Jarat ktil herneamah tuam. Namo harmat nan suchokorat antikrand, groel harmat an suchormat nim, kenen hektend at steyr utsuch, kral harmat ham akransharat annan, mnom hayek orat, kral hak eniat. So. Kwarama, suma steyr utam, amorok antet alaraten steyrokom. Brim hakrandat sen sharakrel renandat iam, nor mat sukrorat hektian, del renandat iam, jaurat ak ansacharat del hretiam, mem ormat nan such rum ka. Sunumat nim hakwa. Aranash dairut san charakmat al hraneat and surumat nim, korm hakremat bdal aranash dairut sun charakwa. Kam steyr matsum charak ua aknema wa sukwa. Karakrakada to masukwa. Amora krada ta kawara kama tuat ini. Ruma tu kara mata kriya sukochu to kawa. Korora kawara kameta to no hadu achado kora kiet elero to kwa kamata ni kara sotu korat. Kora matu korat andia tu koro kwaru matu he. Grata to kwa matia do kwa No, ma'am. Good. Nice.
Wow.
Nice. Any
That
experiences?
was some powerful stuff. Yes. I could feel a tingling in my third eye the whole time, and it was just very active. I wasn't necessarily seeing anything, but it felt like an activation in that center, and it felt very ancient. What was coming through, very, very, very ancient.
Nice. Nice. A few of the things that I was experiencing, and just to remind everyone, your higher self is activating and releasing for you so you can have a totally different experience. But some of the things that I was experiencing more collectively, there was a lot of activation happening with the third eye, and then a lot of throat opening and clearing that was happening because it's part of the being in the way that we manifest into the physical realm that truly helps us see, because we see it through experience. So that was really interesting. Then they started working a lot on the heart. And at that time, this was towards the beginning, I was feeling a lot of Egyptian connection, and I was also feeling cosmic connection. So it wasn't just specific to Egypt, but more to the broader cosmology that Egypt holds keys to, because there's multiple cosmologies there. And then they started working a lot on the heart, and that, of course, makes sense for that expansion of seeing who we truly are and what this experience is. There was also quite a bit that was happening with the lower chakras in order to embody that. Then there was another shift before this, but now I can't remember anything about that one. But then towards the end, there was this sweet energy that came through that was fairy energy, elemental energy. And right as that energy was coming through, something else had been finishing up. And it was like this blending of both of those, where I was seeing, my mouth was really wide open, and I was seeing all of these, what is the best timeline collapse, but dimensional collapses is a better way to say it, because it was breaking through some barriers that we have to be able to experience those dimensional manifestations. And that was really intense. And then what was coming through there was that sweet little elemental energy after that, that felt so sweet and light. And I was even whispering at that time, just felt so sweet and light. But it was that bigger recognition that the power is not just in the loudness or the bold activity, that it's within all things. And sometimes that whisper is what is most powerful. And so that was just such a lovely support of the power that we have within us. So that was what I was experiencing.
Would you recommend us to go back and listen to it a few times to fully let it integrate, or is once enough?
Always follow your intuition, because you'll know what's right for you. But what I would recommend with that particular one is watch it once with your eyes closed, or listen to it once with your eyes closed, so that you're having your internal experience, and then watch it with your eyes open. And it doesn't matter which of those you do first, follow your intuition. But there was something about that one that didn't require eyes open, but is also benefited by that. And the eyes closed is for that internalized journey. And then the eyes opened is supporting that flow of, oh, I'm getting information, I'm feeling, I'm experiencing, and I'm directly interacting with to see clearly. But knowing that we also can see clearly with our eyes closed. Nice.
And that would be an interesting practice to be in that active theta brainwave state while we go out into the world and in our reality, and see how we start perceiving more of the subtle in our daily life. And that's where we're evolving into. So this has been a beautiful, beautiful transmission, Jamie. We end every show with a segment called The Final Trio, which are some questions that we ask at the end of every show. But before that, where would you send people to connect with you, with your work, anything that you would like to share about what's going on in your universe, what you're offering? Anything that you would like to mention there.
Thank you. So the best way to connect with me in my work is my website, jamyeprice.com. And of course, Jamie is spelled weird, but Jamye Price, that part's normal. .com. And then I teach light language for those that want to go through an in-depth journey with that. I teach crystalline soul healing, which is a silent modality that my Lyran guides gave me. It's their template technology. And that brings us more into universal flow. I've got some events coming up and some travel events coming up next year. So this year I'm going to be in Shasta and West Virginia at some events, and connecting with people online at those or in person is always exciting. So lots of stuff always going on because this is a time of change.
For sure. And we'll include everything that you mentioned down in the show notes with the links included so people can go directly to that. And for the final trio, it's interesting. The first two questions are personalized to each guest, and the last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one I had for you is, what is the one misconception about Ascension that humanity is now ready to release?
That it's for special people. It's actually for everyone, and it's very natural to us. And it requires going through the release and activation cycle in order to fully embody it. And that's a beautiful change that I've noticed, that it used to be very different in the past. And now people are recognizing that it's the inner work that truly creates it.
Beautiful. The second question is, how do we know when we're fully empowered?
Oh, that's a good one, because it's a moment by moment thing. And the best clues are you're less in the extreme ups and the extreme downs, maybe not never, but less. And that the times of not feeling that neutrality get shorter and shorter, or the times in between get shorter. Always think of this physical experience like a season changes, how it goes back and forth, or you're in the middle of a season and you have this consistency, and then it's suddenly very different and back and forth. And that's how we are now as we're embodying it. It's like tuning in a radio. And so expect that and work at that, getting into the neutrality through all of those different forms of experience.
That's a powerful, powerful message. And this last question that we ask, we call it the time capsule question. And it requires us to travel out a little bit out into the future, around 15 to 20 years down the line. I chose out those time frames because I believe that's going to be a time in history when the young generations of today will be stepping more into leadership positions around the world. And just like any great leader, they had great access to mentors, wisdom, knowledge, tools, and resources that would allow them to be the best human, the best leader that they can be. And you were given the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule for these leaders that they would open in the future. And this would be, think of it almost like the legacy that you would leave behind for the future generations. And you can include anything in the time capsule. It could be something physical, non-physical, a transmission, a code, a key, or whatever it is, a scavenger hunt, whatever it is. But knowing that it would be unique to you into what you would leave for the future of humanity. What would you put inside the time capsule?
Wow, that's so beautiful. I would put in a message that at this time, we sometimes had doubts. We sometimes couldn't see the pathway, and we sometimes felt separate, even though we believed deep within us that we were connected. And at their time, what we want them to be able to remember, because they're born into all of the desires of all of the generations before them, is that they now know that they're connected and that we are bigger than we ever thought that we were. Maybe we've clipped. And those doubts were the things that made us put hope into the future. And that even though it may seem like we're not here or we're not connected, we now know that we are. And we've always known that that's what the next generations were going to bring, something better. And that's what they're embodying, that we now recognize that we are as big as the universe. We are 99.9+% bigger than we ever thought we could be. And now they're living it.
Jamie, you're such a beautiful soul. And thank you for being such a pioneer for the future generations that will come, and being such an inspiration to allowing yourself to go to those places where, you know, a few years ago, all of this was considered the wacky, the weird, all the other labels that people have put on it. But now it is part of what's necessary for what humanity is going through. And this is the time. So thank you for showing up with your light, your gifts, your message, your guides, your team. It's such a pleasure to get to know you. We instantly felt that Lyran connection when we got on screen, but thank you. And I hope to do these many, many more times and have you back on whenever the time is right. So I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel the same way. Thank you for what you're doing. And this has just been an awesome opportunity, and what a beautiful memory to connect with you.